In the fog-shrouded streets of Port Charles, where secrets fester like open wounds and alliances shatter like fragile glass, the air has long hummed with the promise of violence. For months, the citizens of this beleaguered town whispered of retribution, their grievances piling like storm clouds over the head of one man, Andrew Drew Kane, the congressman whose ambition knows no bounds and whose moral compass spins wildly in the gales of self-interest. Drew Kane, portrayed with a chilling blend of charm and menace by Cameron Matheson, has woven a tapestry of deceit so intricate that it ensnares everyone from the lofty halls of the Quartermain mansion to the shadowed corners of the PCPD precinct. His sins are legion. Betrayals that cut deeper than any knife, manipulations that topple empires, and a relentless hunger for power that leaves scorched earth in its wake. The town braced for the inevitable. And then, on a night thick with tension, the gunshot echoed through the darkness, a thunderclap of fate that should have rewritten the stars. But in Port Charles, fate is a fickle mistress, and the bullet that pierced Drew's flesh proved as impotent as a whisper in a hurricane. The build-up to this cataclysmic moment was nothing short of operatic, a symphony of simmering rage conducted by the very souls Drew had wronged. Port Charles, that perennial cauldron of passion and peril, had become a powder keg with Drew at its fuse. Residents, from the salt-of-the-earth dockworkers to the silk-clad elite, traded furtive glances and barbed words, each harboring a grudge sharp enough to draw blood. It was as if the town itself conspired in hushed tones, plotting the congressman's downfall. Memorials were etched in memory for the lives he had upended, the fractured families, the stolen legacies, the hearts ground to dust beneath his polished boots. The Quartermains, that venerable dynasty of wealth and whispered scandals, seethed in particular. Drew's machinations had infiltrated their bloodlines, turning brother against brother and trust into treason. Michael Corinthos, played with brooding intensity by Chad Jewell, stood as the most vocal sentinel of vengeance, his eyes burning with the fire of a man who had lost too much to forgive. "He's a cancer," Michael had snarled in one heated confrontation, his voice a low growl that reverberated through the sterile corridors of General Hospital. Curtis Ashford, the stoic private investigator embodied by Donald Turner, nursed wounds from Drew's shadowy dealings that threatened to unravel his own hard-won stability. Portia Robinson, the compassionate doctor brought to life by Brooke Kerr, trembled with maternal fury, her scalpel hand itching not for healing but for justice after Drew's schemes imperiled her daughter's future. Yet, the web of suspects spun wider, ensnaring even the most unlikely threads. Nina Reeves, the fiery media maven interpreted with raw vulnerability by Cynthia Watros, clutched her vendettas like rosary beads, her heart a battlefield scarred by Drew's duplicity in matters of love and legacy. Alexis Davis, the silver-tongued lawyer channeled through Nancy Lee Grand's steely gaze, had clashed with Drew in courtrooms that doubled as coliseums, her legal arsenal depleted by his endless evasions. Carly Spencer, the indomitable force of nature portrayed by Laura Wright, embodied the town's unyielding spirit, her loyalty to her kin a fortress, her wrath a siege engine aimed squarely at the man who dared to breach it. Whispers even slithered toward Willow Tate, the once gentle soul now teetering on the precipice of madness, as played by Caitlin McMullen, her fragile psyche, battered by revelations of betrayal, harbored shadows that could birth a storm. And in the periphery, the elders loomed like ancient oaks in a tempest. Stella Henry, the matriarchal whirlwind voiced by Verney Watson, whose tongue lashings could flay skin from bone, or Tommy, Ashford, the enigmatic patriarch rendered by Robert Gossett, whose quiet storms concealed depths of unresolved fury. The possibilities multiplied like echoes in an empty hall. Could it be a Quatermain loyalist striking from the shadows? A Cassadine operative, those eternal puppeteers of chaos, pulling strings from some distant, fog-veiled isle? Or perhaps an outsider, a ghost from Drew's murky military past, summoned by the karmic tides? The shot itself was a masterpiece of dramatic irony, unfolding under the merciless glare of a harvest moon that bathed the waterfront in silvery malice. Drew, striding with that trademark arrogance toward a clandestine meeting, rumors swirled of a power play involving congressional secrets and illicit alliances, never saw the glint of steel in the gloom. The crack split the night, a percussive finale to the overture of threats that had crescendoed for weeks. He crumpled like a marionette severed from its strings, blood blooming across his crisp shirt like accusation in crimson ink. Sirens wailed in the distance, a dirge for what should have been the end of an era. Paramedics swarmed, their frantic hands staunching the flow as Drew's world blurred into oblivion. Port Charles held its breath, televisions flickering in living rooms from the suburbs to the penthouses, viewers leaning forward as if their collective will could tip the scales toward oblivion. Would this be the reckoning? The purge of a poison that had seeped into the town's veins? As dawn clawed its way over the horizon, painting the harbor in hues of bruised purple, the PCPD descended like avenging angels, or, more accurately, like bureaucrats fumbling through a fog of incompetence. Commissioner Anna Devane, with her world-weary elegance, spearheaded the probe, her sharp mind slicing through the alibis like a scalpel. Forensics teams combed the scene, unearthing shell casings that whispered of a high-caliber rifle, positioned from a rooftop perch that suggested calculation over impulse. Suspect lists unfurled like indictments. Michael's unexplained absence during the hour of the shot, corroborated by a suspiciously timed phone call. Curtis's unexplained late-night drive through the docks, his private eye instincts too honed to ignore. Portia's shift at the hospital that ended prematurely, her scrubs still bearing faint traces of what might have been gun oil. Nina's erratic behavior at the Savoy, downing martinis laced with regret. Alexis's fervent late-night research into ballistics precedents. Carly's ironclad demeanor cracking just enough to reveal a flicker of triumph in her eyes upon hearing the news. Willow's disjointed ramblings to her confidants hinted at fractured alibis, while Stella's cryptic Bible verses and Marshall's brooding silences fueled the wilder speculations. The investigation meandered through interrogations that crackled with unspoken accusations, polygraphs that beeped like accusatory heartbeats, and surveillance footage that teased shadows without revealing faces. Port Charles buzzed with conjecture, tavern talk at Kelly's Diner, heated debates in the Quatermain solarium, each theory more labyrinthine than the last. Would the truth emerge like a phoenix from these ashes, or dissolve into the soap opera ether, another loose thread in the grand weave of deception? But fate, that cruel dramatist, had scripted a twist more bitter than gall. Drew Cain did not succumb. In the sterile sanctum of General Hospital, where life and death wage eternal war, surgeons battled the Reaper with precision and prayer. Hours stretched into an agonizing vigil, monitors beeping a Morse code of defiance. Then, against all narrative logic, his eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes that burned not with remorse, but with a feral gleam of survival's savage joy. The bullet had grazed vital paths, a near miss that mocked the town's desperation. Drew rose from his sickbed not as a chastened man, but as a phoenix forged in spite, a darker iteration, his wounds transmuted into armor plated with vengeance. Amnesia? A redemptive arc? The fanciful hopes of fans, who had spun tales of memory wipes erasing his prison-born brutality or unmasking him as the long-lost Shiloh Archer, that charismatic cult leader whose shadow still lingers like incense in the air. No such mercy. The Cassadines' spectral influence? A puppetry of mind control from their mythic stronghold? Mere phantoms in the machine of his unyielding ego. Drew emerged unchanged, or worse, amplified, his despicability distilled to its purest venom. What followed was a maelstrom of retribution that eclipsed the shooting's feeble spark. Discharged with the haste of a man allergic to gratitude, Drew wasted no time in unleashing his arsenal. His first strike landed with surgical cruelty, framing Michael Corinthos for the attempted murder that had so nearly claimed him. Whispers turned to roars as planted evidence surfaced, a burner phone with damning texts, a witness, recalling Michael's shadowy presence at the docks. The Quartermain funeral for Monica, that matriarch whose passing had already rent the family asunder, became the stage for Drew's opening salvo. Barred from the solemn rites by a chorus of righteous fury, he slunk away not in defeat, but with a predator's snarl. From the shadows of Elm Street, he orchestrated a siege on the Quartermain legacy, leaked documents that painted Michael as a corporate saboteur, anonymous tips to the press that ignited scandals like dry tinder, alliances forged with opportunistic foes to encircle the mansion like wolves at a feast. Every Quartermain, from the calculating Ned to the resilient Tracy, found themselves ensnared in his web, their empires teetering on the brink of ruin. Port Charles, that resilient phoenix of a town, reeled under the onslaught. Relationships fractured anew, Carly's fierce protectiveness clashing with Drew's insinuations of her complicity. Nina's fragile empire crumbling under regulatory scrutiny he had anonymously triggered. Even the hallowed halls of General Hospital quaking as Portia's professional standing faced smears of ethical lapses. Drew's rampage was no mere tantrum, it was a manifesto of malice, a declaration that consequences were for lesser souls. He prowled the avenues with a swagger undimmed, his congressional clout a shield against accountability. Boardrooms became battlegrounds, where his silver tongue twisted truths into nooses. Late-night stakeouts revealed him consorting with dubious figures, shady financiers promising leverage, ex-military contacts versed in the dark arts of disinformation. The PCPD's investigation? A farce, stalled by jurisdictional quagmires and Drew's well-placed allies in high places. Michael, hauled into custody amid flashing lights and jeering headlines, fought back with the grit of a man forged in Corinthos fire, but the odds stacked like dominoes toward collapse. Willow, teetering on her own abyss, watched in horror as the man she once glimpsed humanity in devolved into monstrosity. Curtis and Portia, their union strained by suspicion's acid, pondered desperate measures, underground networks, off-the-books inquiries, that skirted the law's long arm. And through it all, Port Charles pulsed with a dramatic undercurrent of irony, as if the town itself mourned the missed opportunity. The shooting, that much-heralded climax, had fizzled into anticlimax, a narrative feint that left viewers adrift in frustration's tide. What purpose had it served? A fleeting thrill? A red herring to distract from deeper rot? Fans, those devoted chroniclers of the saga, flooded forums and social feeds with a cacophony of outrage and speculation. When will the writers let karma cash its check? One lamented, evoking the ghosts of past villains who met their ends in fiery wrecks or oceanic abysses. Others clung to glimmers of hope. Perhaps this escalation would summon unlikely heroes, Sonny's mob muscle, or Jason's spectral return from the presumed grave. Drew's not invincible, another posited, invoking the soap's eternal cycle of falls and resurrections. One day, the bullet finds its mark. Yet the prevailing dirge was one of weary disillusion. In a world where love triangles twist into pretzels and amnesia erases sins with whimsical ease, Drew's impunity stood as a stark rebuke. He was the villain unvanquished, the antagonist whose arc bent toward entropy rather than enlightenment. As autumn leaves swirled like confetti from a funeral in the windswept parks of Port Charles, the question lingered like smoke from a dying fire. Had the shooting changed nothing because Drew was beyond redemption, or because the town itself was complicit in his chaos? In this labyrinth of longing and lies, where every heartbeat echoes with the potential for apocalypse or absolution, one truth endures: the drama never truly ends. It merely reloads, chambering the next round in the endless chamber of the heart. Port Charles waits, breathless, for the shot that finally hits home, not just flesh, but soul. Until then, Drew Kane reigns, a tempest in tailored suits, and the shadows of betrayal grow ever longer.